enough to knock over these buildings, which means at some point in, say, the next 18 months, we're probably going to have a massive radiation release. Now, what's the consequence? They have a blocking high. We mentioned it on the Rense Network program because Jeff actually found this and I confirmed it. We've had weathermen on, including meteorologist pilots, that have confirmed that there's a blocking high out in the Pacific to prevent any storm systems moving from the North Pacific, where most of the water that comes to the west coast of the United States and Canada comes from, which is why we're having such a horrible drought. Yesterday, literally, you could sit, when we were at 1,200 feet, in every direction, around 30 miles around us, there was a fire. There were 9 fires going. Somebody's probably an arsonist, according to the fire marshal, setting them, but the ground is like tinder. It's so dry, it's like a cracker here. It's crazy. And the temperatures today are well over 100 degrees, but it's not just the temperature, it's the humidity level is insanely low for a coastal area. And the weather systems are moving air from the desert over here, because we have desert air, instead of because the systems are being blocked from the North Pacific. Now, why is that significant? Because when massive radiation release happens, they're not going to just be able to block it with blocking weather systems. It means that people are going to start getting acutely sick, and they may not directly link it. Their doctors are not trained in toxicology, immunology, or these kind of very silent killers. For example, you'll see more people get atrial fibrillation, chronic fatigue, myopathies, myofascial pain syndromes, all kinds of things that'll be nondescript. People getting much more allergic because charged particles attach to allergens, these hot fleas, and they make the allergen particle in the air far more allergenic. So it's going to be subtle, but people are going to start getting acute on chronic radiation sickness. Now, they're panicking because they know if you have 320 million Americans that suddenly realize that they've been duped and the government's doing nothing but actually preparing them to die from chronic accumulative long-acting radioisotopes like strontium-90 and cesium-137, Obama and his administration, the IAEA, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission are doing zip. They're basically saying, we don't care if the population in America gets as sick as the Japanese where their birth rate is 0. We don't care if people have 12-year-olds dying of cardiac arrests from cardiac arrhythmias from cesium-137. We don't care if people end up becoming lobotomized zombies caused by radiation sickness. We don't care if people get bloody diarrhea, bloating, or their immune system failures to get acute leukemia or aplastic anemia or autoimmune disease. We don't give a rat's behind. That's what the governments are saying by their inaction. And I think that they basically, Agenda 21, world population reduction, this is an active, not a passive process, and Fukushima is just a start, because a major quake is not just going to hit Fukushima in northern Japan, it's going to hit 5 other sites that are likely to go down that are already structurally damaged. It also means that the push which Obama's done to give equipment to the Israelis to hit the Bushehr reactor is likely to go. And there's around the world, out of 500 and some reactor sites, some with more than one reactor, at least half of them are in the strike zone of an earthquake. So volcanism is increasing dramatically because there's lots of evidence, and I put it up before, that we have an approaching red dwarf star. I don't know how far out it is, but the evidence is accumulating over the past 30 years that a red dwarf star is coming into our inner solar system. The first real serious was the hyper-elliptical comets coming in, the action at a distance, the changes in the weather systems on all the planets in our inner solar system. We're seeing electrophysiological and other effects on gravitonics and volcanology that's dramatically increasing not only weird solar activity, but also increasing the chances we're going to have a major volcanic eruption. We have Yellowstone, where the animals are smart enough, they're taking off. We have volcanism everywhere, major quakes in South America, along the Ring of Fire. And here in America, where Jasko, the last director of the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, put forward the study, they're awfully slow at reporting exactly what their consequences are going to be. It's almost like their study says, well, we did enough study that in these serious reactors, we need to study more. So the study basically says, one, Annan, which we talked about last week, is failing, but all the other reactors, they don't look good, but we're going to study them more. That's all I get out of it so far. I don't get a immediate condemnation of, like, we need billions of dollars so that these reactors don't lose their control and vent off massive amounts of radiation to their local populations. What I hear is the study says, it's so bad, we better study this more. Am I wrong, or is that pretty good analysis of it?
Exactly correct. You remember from last week, we kicked apart several of those technical reports right on your program, and basically we know that something is wrong. We know something has to get fixed. Let's study it more to figure out exactly what.
Well, first off,
you hit the nail right on the head.
let me give you the benchmarks because I have background that covers a wide range of things. So if I did a plant walkthrough, I wouldn't just talk about the areas where people are going to bump their head on a header or get a back injury from certain things. I'd actually analyze the chemical production, the gas areas, the valve systems, the control systems, the alarm systems, etc. And what they need to do is they need to go around the entire plant, make a structural simulated computer model, go around with ultrasound and X-ray of every joint, every structural member of those reactors, and generate real data and analyze exactly where the reactors are likely to have a structural failure. Then they need to have the kind of thrust data in terms of the kind of vibrations that are likely to be generated and what frequency they are based on data accumulated in that specific area, because they'll have that. They need to put that data in terms of horizontal and vertical thrust. If you have, for example, in LA, those earthquakes are likely to be what's called upthrust earthquakes. So it's a different waveform. That's why one building will be destroyed, another will not, because the building has to have harmonics similar to the frequency of the earthquake. If those frequencies are not similar and they don't accumulate in the structure, causing giant waves, there's no structural damage. So they can figure this out with computer modeling, and that they don't need to do more studies. They need to gather data and model it. Then they come up with a very quick answer of what needs to be done and where they need to structurally reinforce the structure not to break down. Circles going, oh my God, oh my God. But a regular person, they can live with all kinds of crap that totally in conflict. Welcome back, Ann Chris. So what we have is a series of what I call tap dancing nuclear journalists trying to kind of tell us we're going to study it more because it's so bad. Well, guess what? I laid out the benchmarks. It's going to be in my updated book, which will be released here very shortly. It'll be in a summary article, which we have posted here at NutriMedical and over on Rentz's website. And you've been a major part of contribution in this. And so even though it's your radio name, you've been a major part of contributing to this information analysis. And as I say, the tagline for the show, if there's only one thing to remember, is ask better questions. Because if you don't ask better questions, you're not going to own the truth. And if you don't own the truth, you're not going to do anything about it. You cannot listen to the pundits on the news media, the IAEA, the Nuclear Regulatory Commission, because there are all kinds of forces trying to tell them that, no, I don't say that now. Even Arnie Gunderson, you can see him toning down things to say, well, it's not that bad. It's this or that. I'm thinking, no, people need to know the whole truth. This is an extinction level event that over time, not only what's going on in Fukushima, but at other nuclear sites around the world with major earthquakes, that we could have, or even just with a power blackout. Let's say you got a great CME off the sun or a red dwarf star, which generates a CME hundreds of times more powerful than the sun can. You could have an extinction level event occur with just the nuclear reactors blowing all over the planet, just because they don't have backup power. If the New Madrid fault system happened, there's at least 25 reactor sites that all have these old-style reactors that immediately are going to go into default and will not be able to maintain containment, period. So we're not just talking about Fukushima. We're talking about the southeastern United States becoming a radioactive dead zone. And people don't grasp that. They don't understand just how stupid and how incompetent our government is. Our president, our Congress, and our Senate, I talked to these morons, and I worked with the people at the FBI and CDC. These people take stupidity to an Olympic level, along with evil. And we need to call it out straight to say, look, there's an IQ gap of about 30 points between the public and the so-called rulers and the bureaucrats that rule us. They're dangerous, stupid, conflicted, corrupted, and have walking around with all kinds of cognitive dissonance. You can't just play with these issues and have a sharp pencil. So, Chris, where the heck do you think this is going? Because I really see disaster. I see radiation sickness that doctors won't recognize, that it's going to start really hitting people in the next years. We have those snowy owls dying along the coast. We have accumulation of pine needles. We have dead sea lions. We have shrinkage of their brains. We have stress and algae that are causing increased domoic acid. It's not just ultraviolet light. It's radiation stress from Fukushima, accumulated bio levels of cesium-137, strontium-90, plutonium, etc. All these stressors increase domoic acid, which causes acetylcholine pathways to be permanently blocked. Where I see things going is not good. I see increasing release of radiation from Fukushima that's going to further damage the ozone layer, further cause major ground level ultraviolet light. And by the way, one of the theses, and I mentioned multi causes for the loss of the bees are being lost because the geomagnetic field of the Earth is disrupted. The ultraviolet light's burning their eyes out, so they're going blind. We're seeing neonicotinoid pesticides, which now are banned in Europe, so that's a major contributing factor. We see the overgrowth of mites and other pathogens which produce mycotoxins. But the worst of all those factors is ultraviolet light. And it's caused by things like Fukushima. And after Fukushima blew, the amount of radiation getting to ground level was dramatically higher. So if you don't wear good protective eyewear, or if you're a surfer and you go out in the oceans, you're going to get at least a pterygium, which is growth across your central visual axis, or you're going to get retinal damage, or you're going to come down with skin cancer, or any one of the combination of the above. And if you don't listen to me, because I'm an expert on these areas, you're going to suffer. So you need to take notice now. You're not going to hear this on other shows on this network or elsewhere, except through me. And the reason why I say this is because I have the expertise and the guts to stand up and say, this is what's happening, and we know the scientific facts that we can solve it, but they don't want to. That, to me, is a monumental crime of omission.